So there's something really weird going on with Megumi and Cursed Technique Burnout, and we're going to talk about that and a lot of other questions from you guys, so strap in, but spoilers beware. So this first topic comes to us from Timo, and as you can see here, he's wondering why doesn't Megumi have Cursed Technique Burnout in Shibuya after domain clashing with Dagon? And he's exactly right, because Megumi opens the domain in order to disrupt Dagon's, and then as we know, shortly thereafter, Toji shows up, makes short work of the lobster, and then starts fighting Megumi, in which case he immediately uses Rapid Escape. Here's the moment in Shibuya for you guys to remember, and Megumi did indeed domain clash with Dagon. I know some people think that he was just doing a barrier to interrupt Dagon's domain, but no, Megumi literally cast Chimero's Shadow Garden in that moment. And then again, mere moments later, he cast Rapid Escape. But this isn't the only weird time something like this has happened with Megumi. Because the very first time he casts his domain against the Finger Bearer Curse, what happens is the Finger Bearer Curse dispels the domain, and then immediately after, Megumi and the Divine Dog attack him. Now here's where some nuance comes into play. Even if Megumi is on Cursed Technique Burnout, if he has any Shikigami that were prior summoned, then they theoretically should be able to at least maintain themselves because he is not having to use the Cursed Technique to bring them forth. So in this case, he would have summoned the Divine Dog before the domain, so that's why it's still okay. But he's traversing shadows right now, and you got to imagine he needs to use his curse technique for that. So here, literally instantaneous moments after the domain was dispelled, Megumi is utilizing shadow transmission. So shouldn't his technique be on burnout right now? And then also, when Megumi used his domain against Reggie, there's some kind of weirdness going on there. Now, Reggie even thinks that Megumi was intentionally waiting to replenish his curse technique, which is entirely possible. Megumi was hiding in shadows and biding his time. But again, he was using the shadow stuff, but also the Divine Dog was still there. But again, that was probably summoned before the domain expansion. And finally, this is just Reggie's own internal thought process on what's happening. It doesn't mean what he's saying here is correct. So what's actually going on here? Why is Megumi able to use his technique immediately after domains, it seems like? So the way I see it, there are basically three possibilities. The first is that it's a plot hole, right? Maybe Gege forgot. And while Gege certainly has made mistakes in the past, I don't think this is a plot hole because I feel like this is something he would have gone back and commented on at this point, whether in a volume release during his edits or corrections or otherwise. So that makes me think we're not looking at a plot hole here, it's some other nuance. So the second possibility is it could be because Megumi's domain is incomplete. He doesn't have a realized barrier with an imbued technique to give it the sure hit effect. So some people are like, well, there you go right now. Because he's not imbuing the technique in the barrier, perhaps it's not burning out. But that doesn't check out to me because that would be a rather large advantage of using an incomplete domain when the situation is right. Because if you don't go on burnout, that's enormous. So I don't think that makes sense. I think even an incomplete domain should give you burnout. However, maybe it gives you less burnout compared to a fully realized domain. I can get behind that, which kind of leads us into the third possibility, and that's just that Megumi has a very quick downtime. Because is it genetic? Is it because of how the Ten Shadows operates? Is it just completely random? Who knows, but he may just have a very quick turnaround, which again could be bolstered by the fact that it's an incomplete domain. And I think this makes the most sense, but it's still pretty crazy with a couple of those examples where he basically immediately uses the technique. But we do have precedent for extremely fast recharge times like we saw with Mahito in Shibuya. After his 0.2 second domain expansion, he got his technique back almost immediately. He runs up and hits Toto with a black flash once, and then the technique is back up. In any case though, it's definitely a weird situation, so I'd love to get y'all's opinion on this down below. But that's actually not the only question I've gotten about Megumi's domain expansion, so let's check out this next one. So Aiden here wants to know what my take on Megumi's domain is, and y'all can pause to read the whole top question up here, but he's essentially saying that since domains are a reflection of you, your innate domain, that perhaps Megumi could never have a completed domain because he doesn't really know who he is. So I agree and disagree with you. I agree fully that this is a great explanation for maybe why Megumi's domain isn't complete, but I disagree with you that he could never have one. I think he could. I just think he's not there yet. I think he's still developing this journey, like you're saying. So I do think if Megumi does kind of find himself, grounds himself, and especially where the story is right now, you know, maybe like finds a reason to live, to keep fighting, then perhaps he could then complete his domain and fully realize it. And then Aiden also asked for my advice on how to start a channel, and specifically an analysis commentary channel, but honestly, the advice I have could apply to anything. So for any of you out there that have ever wanted to dabble in content creation, let's call it, whatever that is, whether it's an analysis commentary channel on anime, or, you know, whether it's an art account where you want to show your work, or, you know, makeup tutorials for all I know, then my main 3 tenets of advice are: first, to just start. Take it from this conceptual idea in your head that you like thinking about and you think would be really fun, and actually take some actionable steps. And in my experience, that can be the hardest part for people, because it's really, you know, it's hard to just take that very first baby step. But once you do, then you got some momentum. So just start. It doesn't have to be good. It doesn't have to be high quality. Just, you know, try making a video. Use your phone. That's all you need, right? So just start. The second would be consistent. If you have the time to devote to it every day, work on it every day. Now, I'm not saying it has to be your full-time job every day, but spend 30 minutes, 15 if that's all you got, you know? Just be consistent, work on it every day. Again, build that momentum. You will be getting better at all of the skills you need to do something like this. And third, detach yourself from the results. Especially if it's your first time ever doing something like this, you're probably not going to go viral on the first video or the first 100, right? So just keep your head down. Don't worry about how many views something gets. Obviously, learn from what you do. Build on what you can, you know, make better. Learn from your mistakes, but detach yourself from the views. Detach yourself from the analytics. Just keep moving forward. And you will eventually learn more what you like to do. Like, you might think you want to make this type of channel, but as you start working on it, you might find out that there's a whole other niche that you really mesh with and love. So those would be my 3 pieces of advice. I know they're pretty generic, but honestly, as somebody who has dabbled in various forms of content creation for over a decade at this point, that has been my tried and true method of actually like getting things done and finding what works. So man, I hope you do it. And anybody else out there that's ever thought about this, just give it a try. Now, switching gears a bit, we have this question from James about the merger, where he says, I've been under the impression that Yuji will be the vessel for the merger. I'm pretty confident that most people understood or agreed that this is very likely. What are the top 3 outcomes you think will happen if Yuji does in fact take on this responsibility? So this is a really popular idea out there, that Yuji's importance goes beyond just being this vessel for Sukuna. Perhaps Kenjaku did all of this experimenting for 1,000 years, and particularly ended up with Yuji to be a linchpin in this merger plan, whether that means he has some responsibility or if he is the literal vessel for it. So I like this idea. I think it makes sense. It means Kenjaku had even more going on behind the scenes that we weren't privy to, which makes sense. But I don't think it has to be the case. I don't think Yuji has to be the vessel for this merger, because I think it has a few avenues for just happening, you know, with Tengen not needing a, you know, third-party intermediary vessel to merge with the rest of humanity. Again, I think it's possible, though. So if that were to happen, like you say, I don't know if I have 3 separate outcomes per se, but I think that has to end in a Yuji sacrifice. If he is the merger or is some fundamental part of it, then I think he either will have to have a battle wrestling for control of it, so to stop the chaos, or all of his friends fighting it, aka him, will have to have this emotional moment of taking out their friend. And perhaps he does manage to wrestle control or something to that effect, maybe an innate domain type battle like within there where they have to take him out, or he willingly takes himself out or something. But that's how I would likely see that going. Next, speaking of Tengen, we got this from Rico, who says Sukuna threw up fingers, not Tengen, in the most recent chapter. And you are correct. In my leaks video, I incorrectly said that he threw up Tengen, but it was indeed fingers. Next up, I got several questions from John, so let's run through these. The first is, can Mahoraga adapt to binding vows? Theoretically, yes. Assuming the binding vow had some sort of impact or effect on Mahoraga, I think he could adapt to it. Next, would sealing Rika hypothetically break the curse? No, I don't think so. I think Rika would be sealed and effectively, you know, harmless during the sealing, but it wouldn't break the curse. Next, can Shikigami make binding vows? I think yes, sophisticated Shikigami, like Mahoraga, I believe could make a binding vow, but like lower ones, I don't think so. Next, could the world-cutting slash break through the prison realm? Yes, I think it could destroy it because it cuts everything in existence, but that doesn't mean it would necessarily free whoever is in there. And finally, could a binding vow be made to escape the prison realm? And no, I don't think so. Next, got this question from K7 who says, I've always wondered, could Yuta have saved Gojo or others if he copied Idol Transfiguration? And if Yuta had copied Idol Transfiguration, he would be so freaking busted because yes, he could heal anyone, basically regardless of the injury, because as we know, the body goes as the soul goes, so it's basically like the most potent form of healing. He could definitely restore everyone's missing limbs and beyond, right? Now, could he have saved Gojo? I don't think so, because Gojo, you know, it's not as if he was alive and they didn't have a way to like give him new legs. As we saw, Shoko stitched him up. So I think it was just that Gojo had already passed on. So he would have been even beyond the reach of Idol Transfiguration at that point. But not only could Yuta be like the best doctor in the universe if he had this, they also probably could have made short work of Sukuna. I mean, we don't know that for sure. Sukuna might have had some workaround for it, but he just touches Sukuna, bye-bye Heian era form and extra arms, right? So yeah, no wonder he wasn't allowed to copy that one. Now, since we talked about Yuta, we have to restore balance and talk about Kashimo. So next up are these questions from Simple. Y'all can pause to read them if you'd like. But the first one asks about Kashimo's lightning effect that he does when he's not using the Cursed Technique, the way he can manipulate charge to get that kind of sure hit effect. So that is just a property of his Cursed Energy. The same way Hikari's Cursed Energy is said to be like sharp or serrated, Kashimo, by virtue of his technique, probably has a special property to his Cursed Energy where he's able to manipulate it in that way. So you could kind of think of it as just like a passive side effect that he has by virtue of the technique, but it's not the technique itself. And then for your second question, you talk about Mythical Beast Amber, and you wonder if there's a degree of using it to where he perhaps discovered that it would fully kill him if he used it all the way, so he didn't. And could he maybe have just RCT'd back from that first potential use? And I think the way this works is that there is just some innate understanding of your own curse technique. Obviously, you have to explore it and master it, but I think there must be some ingrained knowledge that Kashimo had that, hey, if I use this, it will kill me. So I don't think he has varying degrees that he can use it to where like it's non-lethal if he stays in this range and then it becomes lethal. I think it's an all or nothing thing that just, you know, by virtue of being a piece of fiction, he just happened to know that somehow. And finally, we got this question from JoJo on who has a higher pain tolerance, Jonathan or Yuji. And don't get me wrong, Jonathan definitely took his licks. The man obviously has a massive pain tolerance, but Yuji? Well, he's got a hard line drawn in the sand describing his pain tolerance. Because if it's just pain, Yuji Itadori will never stop. That's all I got for this one, y'all. Special shout out to everybody who donated. Thank you so much for the support, and thank you guys for watching.